So, you're enjoying some Smokin' Jays. We just want you to know we love Smokin' Jays.
Josh and Jeremy are the brothers of Smokin' Jays, and all their staff is awesome too. But if you haven't noticed, Smokin' Jays has been joining with us in events since the very beginning of Uncommon Good. And those guys are just great. They're super supportive. And actually, I've had several families that in need of meals go to Smokin' Jays, and they take care of them. And so we obviously wanted to partner with them tonight, bring them great business, encourage you guys to go give them more business. And we're just thankful for the way God connects us with people in our community.
And their food is ridiculously good.
So good.
So good.
So good.
So that being said, we started the night with the question of identity, right? How has our identity shifted during this super weird time? And now we want to go into another fun topic, which is this idea of waiting. Because a lot of us have felt kind of like we're trapped in this cycle of waiting. You know what it makes me think of? Remember that Tom Hanks movie where he's stuck at the airport and he just lives at the airport and every day he's just still at the airport?
Wait, Terminal?
Terminal. That's
Is that
the word.
Tom Hanks?
Yeah. A lot of us have just been like stuck in the freaking airport of life right now. Like our green cards didn't come through and we're just stuck at our houses waiting for things to go back to normal.
Is school going to go back?
Waiting for the next thing. Waiting for our jobs to go back to normal.
Waiting for events to gather in person.
Yes. Waiting to leave our homes.
Yes.
And a lot of us, I'm thinking of some of you in particular, I'm looking at you, hate waiting. We especially hate waiting when it doesn't feel productive, when we don't know what we're waiting for, when we don't have a clear next step, and it just feels like this mushy, ugh. That's the best way I can describe it. You know what I mean?
And so many of us, we oftentimes just personally deep inside base our self-value, how we see ourselves on what we produce.
What we accomplish.
Yeah. And waiting doesn't feel like you're often accomplishing things at times. That maybe you're not being as productive, you're not being as successful. And so this waiting period during also so much going on in our nation can just feel like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Unproductive, not being valuable.
Swirly is what I think of. Ugh, just like, yeah, what is happening with life right now? I don't know if you felt that, but I have really felt that lately.
So oftentimes, Uncommon Good, we have a mission. We have a mission of always creating a space for people to connect with God and to connect with one another in community, which is laughable at this time, the second part.
Right.
But there is a meaning and a purpose tonight for you to think about. What is it like in a time of waiting? Historically, even looking back in some biblical stories, what is it like to meet with God in a time of waiting? Because oftentimes we're not good at waiting spiritually.
No.
Often, even in our spiritual journey, whatever faith you're a part of, in the iconic Christian journey, as soon as you say, I believe, you're giving a list of things to do, programs to attend, steps to take.
Mm-hmm.
And waiting isn't part of the journey.
That's right. I was going to say, just as a culture, we've gotten worse and worse at waiting, right?
Yeah.
Like waiting in line. We hate waiting in line. If we're waiting in line for like a hot second, we're going to pull out our phone to be on our phone.
Fill the time.
Yeah. We can't just be idle. Waiting for something to come in stock at a store. Are you kidding me? No, I want it right now. I want it delivered for free in 2 days max, right? Like, I don't want to wait for anything.
But the problem is when you fill your waiting time, what you're doing is you're not allowing your brain to process or even reflect on life and who you are and what is meaningful and what true priorities you have besides the busyness that's in your hands.
I know, but I like being busy more than waiting.
Totally. That's our culture to base our value on productivity. But God wants to meet us in waiting. And as much as we might be dealing with an identity shift because of wondering who we are because our do has changed, what we do has changed, Now we're in the state of waiting, which we want to encourage you not to shortchange your waiting by filling your life with busyness, because in waiting, there's time for reflection. There's time for looking in your soul. There's time for looking up and going, God, who are you? And what do you have to do with me? What do I have to do with you? And
who
what is it?
Am I in the midst of all that?
Who am I in the, totally. God meets us in the waiting, but oftentimes religion shortchanges the waiting.
It's true.
There's a story in the New Testament, in a book called Acts, where Paul, previously known as Saul, like many of us have heard of Apostle Paul, and he's the main writer of the whole New Testament, the Christian New Testament. Well, Paul, previously known as Saul, was a persecutor of all of those who were believing and following Jesus, right? And he's a big name of persecutor. He's hunting them down, taking them out. And Saul then had this moment where he's going through the desert. He's pursuing people that are following Jesus to actually kill them.
Right.
Or at least get them thrown in jail. And all of a sudden, light shines down on Paul. And this voice speaks his name. And Paul looks up and goes, Lord, is that you? Right? And what happens next is so interesting. Paul goes blind because of the light, right? And all the voice, which is God speaking to his soul, all the voice says is, go to this city and wait. I'll
Yeah, that's it.
Then I'll show up. I'll tell you what's next. But basically, just go and wait.
So he didn't give him like a timeline.
No, he didn't say join this group, go here.
He didn't say
do these things.
like do X, Y, and Z. It was simply go here and wait.
And he's blind. So there's one thing about waiting. We're going to talk about this in the next thing. But if you're waiting and you're blind, it increases your other senses, especially when you don't know what's happening next. Right. So for 3 days, it says Paul went to the city and waited. And waiting, maybe you all relate to this. He was waiting and he didn't know what was going on. He wasn't eating. He didn't want to eat or drink anything. He was probably in a state of just total confusion, not doing life normally. And yet that was where he was waiting to hear from what God had next in his life.
That's right.
I would encourage all of us to kind of turn up our ears in this waiting time and to sit in silence and set things aside and actually reflect on who we are and maybe what would God have to say to us in this season of waiting. Because
it would be one thing if this was just like a one-off story of how God interacted with one person, right? But when you look at the story of what God has done, which is the Bible, how God interacts with people, it is filled with God encountering people in the waiting. And so as much as we just like want to kick against the waiting, we want to feel productive and like we have forward momentum, there is something about waiting that makes us ready for meeting God.
So if there were good to come out of this waiting, the question for now, as you enjoy your smoking jays, is to go, what are you waiting for? What does your soul wait for? What does your soul hope for in this season, in this time right now?
Yeah. So talk about that. Be real. What is that thing that stirs hope inside? What is the thing that waiting gets you excited about? Share that with each other, and we will see you next at Baked Bear
in Carmel Mountain.
So enjoy your smoking jays and then head on over to Baked Bear for some delicious dessert.